Welcome back to the deep dive, everybody. We've heard from a lot of you that you really appreciate getting, a solid understanding of some pretty major historical topics, without having to spend hours and hours. So that's what we try and do.
Right.
So today we're gonna take a look at a pretty fascinating story, really. How did this one rugged aircraft called Little Chief and its pilot, it seems like he had ice water in his veins, become this like enduring symbol of American air power in the Pacific in World War II?
It's an incredible story.
Yeah, a lot of drama, a lot of action. So we're going to unpack the story of Little Chief in this deep dive. It's a pilot, Lieutenant William D. Dunham, and the incredible 348th Fighter Group.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think you're really going to enjoy this one. We've put together what we consider to be a strategic assessment of Little Chief, zeroing in on the critical elements that really made this aircraft and its pilot exceptional. And really, our mission here is to understand their impact in the vast and really very difficult, landscape of the Pacific War.
Absolutely. And I think to really understand the story of Little Chief, we need to start with the man at the controls, Lieutenant William D. Dunham of the 348th Fighter Group. Now, this was no ordinary pilot. Born in Tacoma, Washington, Dunham had this early fascination with aviation, and it was that passion that led him to enlist in the U.S. Army Air Forces. And what's particularly striking is how fast he rose through the ranks. I mean, his skill, his drive, they really set him apart from his peers.
Yeah. And he didn't just show his skill back in the States. I mean, Dunham proved himself, like you said, in the Pacific theater, in combat. I mean, that's a whole other level.
Absolutely. He emerged as a top American ace in the Pacific, racking up an incredible 16 aerial victories. 16. Now, to give you some context there, an ace is any pilot who's credited with shooting down 5 or more enemy aircraft. So his tally is definitely significant.
Absolutely.
But it's not just about the numbers, it's also about his legendary composure under fire, this incredible calmness that, earned him the nickname Billy the Kid.
Wow, that's a great nickname.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a cool nickname either. I mean, it really speaks to the psychological advantage, right? A pilot who could stay calm in the chaos of aerial combat. It's something that we often overlook in the historical account.
Yeah, absolutely. Billy the Kid of the Skies. It paints a pretty vivid picture. Now, I mean, Little Chief was a powerful aircraft, but it wasn't operating alone, right? I mean, it was part of a larger coordinated effort.
Yeah.
So tell us about the squadron and the group that it was a part of.
Sure. So Little Chief flew with the 342nd Fighter Squadron, which was part of the legendary 348th Fighter Group. Now, the 348th, they gained a really formidable reputation in the Pacific. They were known for their effectiveness in air-to-air combat, but also in ground attack missions, really taking the fight to the enemy on multiple fronts.
Yeah, and they were flying some serious hardware, right? I mean, the P-47 Thunderbolt, it was known for being incredibly tough.
Yeah, it was. The Thunderbolt was renowned for its durability and firepower, which proved to be essential in the ground attack role that they often found themselves in the Pacific. While its high altitude performance wasn't its primary strength, its ruggedness was key. And what's fascinating is how the 348 had to adapt these aircraft to the unique demands of the Pacific. The long overwater flights, the harsh conditions on our remote islands. It was a challenge.
Oh, absolutely.
And their ingenuity in modifying the Thunderbolt for these long-range missions speaks to a larger point about wartime innovation.
Sure.
It's that necessity that drives, that fuels ingenuity. You see it over and over again throughout history.
Makes sense. Push comes to shove.
Exactly.
They were mainly operating around New Guinea and the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
From what I understand, I mean, that's a really tough environment for both man and machine.
You're absolutely right, and their role was absolutely critical to the Allied advance. They provided air cover for ground troops, they escorted bombers, and they engaged in dogfights with Japanese fighters. When you connect it back to the bigger picture, their contributions were crucial to the overall success in the Pacific, and their service didn't go unnoticed. The 348th earned numerous commendations by the war's end.
Yeah, it sounds like they earned them. So Little Chief was part of this really effective and decorated unit. I mean, that really adds a lot of weight, a lot of significance to the aircraft story. But speaking of the name, I mean, Little Chief itself, it has a specific meaning, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, Little Chief, It reflects Lieutenant Dunham's leadership, his fighting spirit, and accounts suggest that the inspiration for the name likely comes from Dunham's respect for Native American culture, where chief symbolizes strength, courage, and resilience.
I mean, that really adds a whole other layer to the story.
Right. It does. And it wasn't just about Dunham's individual identity either. I mean, Little Chief, it created a bond between him and the aircraft. It almost became an extension of himself in the air. And it also represented the camaraderie within his squadron. You know, everyone knew Little Chief and what it stood for.
Yeah, and we see this a lot, right, with soldiers personalizing their equipment. I mean, it had to be a huge morale booster.
It was. It was a very common practice during the war. Pilots naming their aircraft. It's a way to boost morale, to forge a connection with these incredible machines that they depended on, you know, for their survival. But for Dunham, I think Little Chief went beyond just being a morale booster. I mean, it embodied his determination to lead and to win, you know, under some pretty extreme pressure.
So Little Chief becomes more than just an airplane. It becomes, like you said, this symbol.
It does.
So what's its lasting legacy?
Well, Little Chief, it stands as the symbol of the 348's achievements. And of course, Lieutenant Dunham's skill as a pilot. But it also actively participated in numerous missions, and it contributed to the Allied victory in the Pacific.
Yeah. Are there any specific examples that stand out to you?
Well, Little Chief was involved in some critical engagements over the Philippines. It helped to establish air superiority in that theater. It was involved in the destruction of enemy airfields, supply lines, you know, things that had a direct impact on the Japanese war effort. You know, when we look back at the history of World War II aviation, Dunham's legacy as a top American ace, it's really inseparable from the story of Little Chief. His courage, his dedication, they continue to inspire pilots even today.
So if we try to kind of sum up everything we've talked about, this deep dive into the story of Little Chief, it gives us this really insightful look at a really important aspect of World War II aviation in the Pacific, right?
It does. It shows us the skill of pilots like Lieutenant Dunham, the capability of aircraft like the P-47, and the effectiveness of units like the 342nd, all operating in this incredibly challenging environment.
Yeah, it's amazing how much you can learn just by focusing on this one aircraft and the experience of its pilot, right? It makes the whole historical narrative feel more real, more personal.
It does. It brings it to life. And it raises an interesting question. You know, how did that personal connection between a pilot and his aircraft affect his performance in combat? You know, did it influence the outcome of missions? And are there modern day parallels? You know, do we see this kind of bond in other professions where people are under a lot of pressure?
It's a great question. Really makes you think. If you're interested in learning more about World War II aircraft, and I assume you are if you've listened this far, you might also be interested in some of our other deep dives. We've done episodes on the P-40 Warhawk, the P-51 Mustang. They're all in our archives. Anyway, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Little Chief. We'll see you next time.